Waitress gave free coffee to a homeless veteran. He left her a check that shocked the CEO. The air in the opulent ballroom shimmered with a deceptive luster, reflecting the false gleam of polished brass and superficial smiles. Crystal chandeliers, heavy with centuries of accumulated wealth, dripped light onto the silk gowns and bespoke suits of New York's elite. Each person present was a carefully curated masterpiece of wealth and influence, a living advertisement for privilege and power. They moved with an ease born of absolute confidence, their laughter light and brittle, their conversations a dance of veiled boasts and strategic alliances. In the very center of this glittering tableau, Sterling Hawthorne, a man whose tailored suit seemed to have been borne on his shoulders, raised a flute of champagne. The gesture was one of triumphant finality, a silent toast to a future he believed was irrevocably his. His fiancée, Genevieve, a woman whose beauty was as sharp and calculated as the diamond earrings that glittered at her lobes, clung to his arm. Her eyes, cool and assessing, were already calculating the worth of their impending inheritance, mentally redecorating the mansion, envisioning a life free from any lingering patriarchal oversight. Around them, the whispers of the late Silas Hawthorne, the reclusive patriarch of Hawthorne Innovations, still lingered, like a ghost invited to its own wake, a morbid curiosity that added a frisson of excitement to the evening. A curious observer, one whose presence had long been a silent, calculating force, noted the subtle shift in the room's energy. The scent of expensive perfumes and aged whiskies mingled with an underlying current of avarice. He had known this room, these people, for decades. He had built the empire they now squabbled over, crafted the very foundations upon which their lives of leisure rested. And he saw them, truly saw them, for the first time in years, unburdened by the illusions of familial affection or corporate loyalty. The grand ballroom, a stage for their performance of grief, served only to underscore their profound emptiness. Suddenly, a disturbance. The choreographed elegance of the event fractured as a figure, disheveled and profoundly out of place, shuffled through the impeccably dressed crowd. His uniform, faded and worn, spoke not of galas attended, but of battles fought long ago, of a life lived on the fringes, far from the polished gleam of society. His face, etched with lines that could have been wisdom or the deep ravages of hardship, was partially obscured by an unkempt beard, a deliberate disguise carefully cultivated over months. It was Silas, the supposed homeless veteran, an uninvited specter in a world that had long forgotten how to see beyond appearances. He moved with an almost deliberate clumsiness, bumping into a waiter whose tray of delicate pastries teetered precariously, causing a minor stir, a collective intake of shocked breaths. His gaze, however, remained fixed, unwavering, as it settled on Sterling and Genevieve, the unwitting protagonists of his grand design. "The game, it seems, is finally over," the old man rasped, his voice surprisingly clear amidst the clinking of glasses and the hushed whispers of the elite. There was a knowing, almost pitying, smile playing on his lips, a smile that seemed to mock the very foundations of their carefully constructed reality. It was a smile born of deep understanding, of a truth revealed through deception. Sterling, mid-sip of his champagne, paused, the delicate liquid clinging to his lips. His perfectly sculpted brow furrowed in irritation, a fleeting shadow of annoyance crossing his otherwise serene features. He had seen this old tramp before, loitering outside the family offices, a persistent nuisance, an unsightly blight on his perfectly ordered world. "Excuse me, old man," Sterling sneered, his voice dripping with condescension, "do you mind? This is a private event. I suggest you find your way out before security escorts you." He dismissed the man with a flick of his wrist, as if shooing a fly, a gesture practiced and refined over years of brushing aside the inconvenient and the unsightly. Genevieve, her face a mask of distaste, pulled Sterling closer, whispering something about the odor of desperation, her delicate nose wrinkling in disgust. Her words were not meant to be kind, but to further alienate and diminish the unwanted intruder. The old man, Silas, merely chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound that scraped against the polished elegance of the room. It was a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories, a lifetime of observation. Indeed, it is private, he agreed, his eyes twinkling with an almost maniacal amusement, a silent testament to the profound irony of the situation. Private enough for the truth to finally reveal itself, wouldn't you say? He paused, allowing his gaze to sweep across the oblivious faces of the guests, lingering for a beat too long on Sterling and Genevieve, whose expressions were a mixture of annoyance and barely concealed contempt. "Some games, my dear boy," Silas continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that only Sterling could hear, a secret shared between the puppet master and his oblivious puppet, "are played for stakes far higher than money. They are played for the very soul of a legacy." Sterling scoffed, taking a larger gulp of champagne, his bravado a flimsy shield against the unsettling gaze of the old man. "Legacy? You reek of cheap whiskey and delusion. Now, be gone before I call the police." He turned his back, a definitive act of dismissal, choosing to believe the old man was just another lunatic who had wandered in from the streets, a minor disruption easily forgotten. Genevieve rolled her eyes, her attention already returning to a conversation about the latest yacht acquisition, her mind already navigating the waters of future luxury. They were utterly blind, utterly oblivious to the profound irony unfolding before them. The man they were so casually insulting, the man they believed was a mere tramp, was the very architect of their fate, the puppet master pulling the strings of their gilded cage. And the game, as he had so ominously declared, was indeed over, though they had no inkling of the grand reveal that was about to shatter their world into a million glittering, worthless pieces. Silas Hawthorne had built an empire, not merely of technology and sustainable energy, but of innovation that genuinely sought to better the world. Hawthorne Innovations was a behemoth, a testament to his genius, his foresight, and his relentless work ethic. He had envisioned a future where technology served humanity, where progress did not come at the cost of the planet. Every patent, every acquisition, every strategic partnership had been carefully orchestrated to further this grand vision. Yet, as the decades passed and his fortune swelled beyond the wildest dreams of avarice, Silas found himself increasingly isolated, a king on a throne of gold, surrounded by leeches and sycophants. His family, once a source of comfort, a reason for his tireless efforts, had devolved into a collection of entitled parasites, their conversations revolving solely around inheritance, luxury, and the accelerated decline of his health. He heard their hushed discussions, their barely concealed impatience, the mercenary glint in their eyes. His grandson, Sterling, was the embodiment of this materialistic decay, a polished facade over a hollow core. From a young age, Sterling had shown a startling lack of empathy, a ruthless ambition that saw people as mere stepping stones or obstacles to be ruthlessly removed. Silas remembered a cruel incident from Sterling's childhood, a discarded pet, a broken promise, a chilling indifference to suffering that had unnerved him even then. As Sterling grew, his discussions of his grandfather's impending demise were laced with an almost gleeful anticipation. He openly discussed how he would modernize the company, a euphemism for stripping its humanitarian projects and focusing solely on profit margins, regardless of the ethical cost. He spoke of the dead weight of social responsibility, of outdated environmental initiatives. Genevieve, Sterling's fiancée, was an equally chilling reflection of their shared values. Her beauty was her currency, her charm a carefully crafted facade that dissolved into disdain the moment she encountered anything less than absolute opulence. Silas had once overheard her complaining to Sterling about the boring old mansion, and how they would redecorate with a vengeance, the moment Silas was gone, selecting new art, commissioning new, ostentatious furniture. All while Silas sat just rooms away, ostensibly napping, listening to the chilling details of their rapacious plans. The board of directors, once a collection of visionary minds, pioneers in their fields, had become a chorus of yes men, their voices synchronized in a desperate attempt to curry favor with the presumptive heir. Their advice was hollow, their loyalty fleeting, shifting with the prevailing winds of power. Silas, a man who had dedicated his life to integrity and progress, felt a growing sense of disillusionment, a profound weariness that settled deep into his bones. He saw the future of his legacy, his life's work, being handed over to those who would defile it, turning his vision into a mere vessel for their insatiable greed. The thought gnawed at him, a festering wound in his conscience. The tipping point, the moment of no return, came during a supposed family dinner, a charade of civility that quickly devolved into Sterling and Genevieve openly debating which of Silas's prized art pieces they would sell first, which charities they would cut, which loyal employees they would dismiss. Sterling even mused, with a casualness that chilled Silas to the core, about converting his private nature reserve into a luxury golf course, the pristine wetlands drained, the ancient trees felled. Grandpa's little green project, Sterling had quipped, is taking up far too much prime real estate. Think of the club memberships, the prestige. Silas had watched them, their faces alight with avarice, their eyes gleaming with unchecked desire, and in that moment, a chilling realization dawned upon him: they did not see him as a grandfather, a mentor, or even a human being. He was merely an asset, an obstacle delaying their inevitable acquisition of his fortune, a prize to be collected. It was then that Silas conceived his audacious plan. He would fake his own death. Not for escape, but for observation, for revelation. He would become a ghost in his own life, invisible to those who only saw what they wanted to see. He had always been a master of strategy, a chess player of the highest order, anticipating moves, calculating risks, setting traps. This would be his grandest game yet, a test of character, a final, definitive judgment. He meticulously planned every detail, each step a calculated risk. The subtle manipulation of his health records began months in advance, a slow, believable decline engineered with the help of a discreet, loyal doctor who understood the unique nature of Silas's request. Fabricated symptoms, carefully timed collapses, and a gradual withdrawal from public life painted a convincing picture of a man fading away. He made quiet arrangements with a trusted, discreet legal team to execute a new, secret will, one that would only come to light under very specific, controlled circumstances. Then came the careful selection of a new identity, a persona that would allow him to blend into the forgotten corners of the city, to observe without being observed. He chose the persona of Silas, the disheveled, aging veteran, a man easily dismissed, easily overlooked. He sourced an authentic, worn military uniform from a vintage store, ensuring it carried the patina of genuine hardship, not a costume, but a second skin. He practiced the slouch, the weary gait, the faraway look in the eyes of a man who had seen too much, a man carrying burdens invisible to the casual observer. He fabricated a backstory of lost comrades, forgotten wars, and a life derailed by circumstance, a narrative designed to evoke either pity or contempt, depending on the observer. He withdrew a modest sum of cash, enough to sustain his charade but not so much as to raise suspicion. He had hidden cameras and listening devices expertly placed in various key locations within the mansion, within the corporate offices, anticipating the reactions of his family, the board, and indeed, the world, to his passing. He wanted to capture their unguarded moments, their true sentiments. Silas understood that true character was not forged in the light of prosperity, but revealed in the crucible of adversity. He wanted to see who would mourn his loss genuinely, who would celebrate his demise, and more importantly, who would extend kindness without expectation of reward, even to someone they perceived as utterly insignificant. His vast fortune, his life's legacy, would not fall into the hands of the unworthy. He would ensure it found its way to a soul truly deserving, a soul that understood the value of humanity over the glittering emptiness of gold. The stage was set, the players unwitting, and Silas Hawthorne, the ghost, was ready to begin his final, most critical experiment. Silas, now known simply as the Veteran, began his peregrinations, a phantom observer in the sprawling city he had once commanded. His initial forays were designed to test the waters, to gauge the general public's reaction to his new guise. He found a spectrum of responses, hurried glances from busy commuters, sympathetic smiles that never quite reached the eyes from passers-by, outright avoidance from those who preferred to ignore discomfort, and occasionally, a gruff offer of charity, a crumpled dollar bill pressed into his hand. But his true targets were closer to home, those whose reactions would validate his profound suspicions. One crisp autumn morning, Silas found himself outside the grand, glass-fronted offices of Hawthorne Innovations. The building, his brainchild, now seemed to tower over him with an ironic indifference, a monument to a vision they were ready to dismantle. He watched as Sterling Hawthorne, impeccably dressed as always, emerged from a sleek black sedan, his phone pressed to his ear, a look of perpetual self-importance plastered across his face. He gestured imperiously to his driver, then to a security guard, as if even the air around him needed to be managed. Genevieve, draped in designer clothes, trailed behind him, already scanning the street for paparazzi or anyone she deemed worthy of her attention, a calculated pose perfected over years of public display. Silas shuffled closer, adopting a slight limp, a subtle tremor in his hand. "Excuse me, sir," he called out, his voice hoarse, carefully modulated to convey a blend of fatigue and deference. "Any chance you could spare a moment for an old soldier? Just a little something for a cup of coffee?" Sterling paused, his eyes flicking over Silas's worn uniform with a sneer of utter contempt. "Do I look like an ATM, old man?" he scoffed, not breaking his stride, his voice sharp with irritation. "I have a board meeting. Important business. Find a shelter." He quickened his pace, pulling Genevieve along, as if the mere proximity of the veteran was contaminating. Genevieve, however, stopped, her eyes narrowing in recognition. "Oh, it's you again," she hissed, her voice a low, furious whisper, recognizing his persistent presence, a recurring annoyance. "Honestly, Sterling, doesn't security do anything about these nuisances? You're making our grand opening look like a charity soup kitchen." She spoke loud enough for passers-by to hear, her tone laced with disgust, her lips curling. "Move along, Grandpa. No handouts today. Go on, shoo." Silas felt a familiar pang of disappointment, though it was now laced with a bitter validation. He had expected this, had anticipated their disdain, yet the raw contempt in their voices still stung, a testament to their utter lack of grace. He merely nodded slowly, his gaze holding theirs for a beat too long, a silent judgment that they were too blind to perceive, too consumed by their own self-importance. They scurried away, into the gleaming sanctuary of the building, leaving Silas alone on the sidewalk, a testament to their profound lack of humanity. Days later, Silas observed them again, this time at a high-end art gallery opening, a philanthropic event they were merely attending for appearances, another box to tick on their social calendar. Sterling was holding forth on a modern sculpture, pontificating on its market value, completely devoid of any artistic appreciation, while Genevieve prattled on about the artist's social connections, and the potential for a new, crowd. Silas, in his veteran garb, positioned himself near a refreshment table, feigning interest in a canopy, but his ears were tuned to their conversation, picking up every word, every nuance of their self-serving dialogue. "Honestly, darling," Genevieve purred, her voice a low, sibilant whisper, "I can't believe how much time Silas spent on those silly, green energy, projects. Such a waste of resources. Imagine what we could have done with that capital. A private jet, another yacht, a villa in Tuscany." Sterling chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Exactly. Father was always a dreamer. Good thing I'm here to bring us back to reality. The first thing I'm doing is divesting from all those unprofitable ventures. No more saving the planet, just saving our bottom line." He raised his voice slightly, as if daring anyone to challenge his ruthless pragmatism, his belief in profit above all else. He even gestured with his champagne glass, emphasizing his point. Silas decided to make his presence known, to introduce another variable into their carefully curated evening. He moved towards them, his movements deliberately slow, a slight shuffle that drew attention. "Pardon me," he said, his voice softer this time, less demanding, "but I overheard you speaking of green energy. My son, he used to talk about that. Said it was the future, saving the world and all. Sterling turned, his eyes narrowing in annoyance, a familiar scowl twisting his features. You again, he spat, his voice rising in irritation. Are you following us? This is harassment. I'm warning you, old man. Genevieve clutched his arm, her eyes darting around nervously, worried about who might be observing their interaction with the tramp, concerned about the optics. Just trying to make conversation, young man, Silas replied, a subtle note of challenge in his tone, a glint in his eye that Sterling was too consumed by his own irritation to notice. It's a lonely road out here for an old veteran. Sometimes a little conversation is all one asks for. Well, take your loneliness elsewhere, Sterling snapped, his voice now a harsh whisper, his face reddening with anger. We're not interested in your sob story. Get lost before I have you removed. This is a private event, for invited guests only. He then turned to a passing gallery attendant, could you please deal with this vagrant? He's disturbing the guests and making everyone uncomfortable. Silas watched them walk away, their backs rigid with indignation, their contempt palpable. He felt no anger, only a profound sense of confirmation. They were truly lost, consumed by their own self-importance, incapable of seeing beyond the superficial, the immediate gain. His heart ached, not for himself, but for the legacy he had worked so hard to build, a legacy they were so eager to dismantle, to strip bare for their own selfish desires. The future of Hawthorne Innovations, should it fall into their hands, would be a bleak one, devoid of purpose beyond profit. His journey then led him, not to another gilded cage, not to another opulent display of hollow wealth, but to the worn, welcoming embrace of Ilara's diner. The exterior was unassuming, a faded sign above a chipped red door, the paint peeling in places. The aroma of brewing coffee and griddle fried onions wafted onto the street, a scent of honest work and comfort, a stark contrast to the sterile air of the gallery. Silas hesitated for a moment, observing the steady stream of working-class patrons, the easy camaraderie within, then pushed open the door. Inside, the diner was modest but impeccably clean, a scattering of booths with worn vinyl seats and a long counter with swivel stools that creaked softly with every turn. Behind the counter, a woman with tired but kind eyes, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, was wiping down the surface with a practiced efficiency. This was Ilara Vance. Her movements were efficient, practiced, a testament to years of long hours and demanding customers, her hands showing the faint redness of constant work. Silas observed her for a moment, noticing the faint shadows under her eyes, the way she massaged her lower back every so often, a silent indicator of her own struggles, her own quiet burdens. He knew, from his discreet investigations, that Ilara was a single mother, working 2 jobs to keep her small family afloat, her dreams often deferred in favor of bills and basic necessities. He had learned of her quiet acts of generosity, the times she had discreetly given a free meal to a struggling neighbor, or allowed a customer to pay later when their wallet was thin. Silas shuffled towards an empty booth in the corner, his worn uniform a stark contrast to the diner's cheerful, if somewhat dated, decor. The scent of coffee, bacon, and warm bread filled the air, a comforting, familiar aroma. Ilara noticed him, and a flicker of something unreadable crossed her face, not judgment, not pity, but perhaps a touch of weariness, the kind that comes from seeing too much hardship in the world. Yet, she offered a genuine smile, a warmth that seemed to emanate from within, a light in tired eyes. "Welcome, sir," she said, her voice soft but clear, her tone even. "Find yourself a seat anywhere you like. I'll be right with you." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight of respect, of genuine welcome. Silas slid into the booth, the worn vinyl sighing under his weight. He watched Ilara serve another customer, her patience unwavering despite a somewhat demanding order. Ilara then approached his booth, a menu in hand. "What can I get for you today, Hon?" she asked, her tone devoid of condescension, treating him with the same respect she would any other customer, a testament to her inherent dignity. Silas looked at the menu, his eyes lingering on the prices, feigning a moment of indecision. He had money, of course, a discreet wad of cash in his pocket, but he wanted to see her reaction, to test her generosity, to observe her true nature under slight duress. "Just a coffee, ma'am," he rasped, "and maybe, a glass of water." He feigned a look of embarrassment, as if the cost of even a simple meal was a burden, a luxury beyond his reach. Elara's gaze softened. She looked at his uniform, at the lines on his face, at the subtle tremor in his hand, and a quiet understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of life's heavy burdens, the unseen struggles that often accompany age and hardship. "Just coffee and water, huh?" she mused, a thoughtful pause. Then her smile widened, a true, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. "Tell you what, on the house for a veteran. And you look like you could use something warm in your belly. How about I whip you up a plate of our daily special? Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and gravy. It's on me, hon." Silas's heart, long hardened by the cold calculations of the corporate world, by the pervasive greed of his own family, felt a gentle tremor, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He had expected indifference, perhaps even a subtle hint of reluctant charity, but not this genuine, unsolicited kindness, this boundless generosity offered freely, without a second thought. "You don't have to do that, ma'am," he said, feigning surprise, his voice a little rougher than intended. "Nonsense," Elara replied, already turning towards the kitchen, her movements decisive. "You served our country. It's the least I can do. Everyone deserves a warm meal and a moment of peace, especially those who have given so much." Her conviction was clear, unwavering. Minutes later, Elara returned with a steaming plate of food and a large mug of coffee. The aroma alone was comforting, a simple, wholesome scent of home-cooked goodness. As Silas ate, slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite, Elara leaned against the counter, not rushing him, not hovering, but simply being present, tending to other customers while keeping a gentle eye on him. "So, where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?" she inquired gently, her voice soft, showing genuine interest. Silas launched into his fabricated story, weaving tales of a forgotten war, of sacrifices made and friends lost, of returning to a world that had moved on without him, leaving him adrift. He spoke of the loneliness, the struggle to adapt, the feeling of being invisible, of being forgotten. Elara listened, truly listened, her eyes filled with an authentic compassion, a deep well of empathy. She didn't interrupt with platitudes or offer empty reassurances, didn't try to fix his problems with empty words. She simply absorbed his words, her silence a testament to her empathy, her understanding. "That sounds incredibly hard," she said quietly when he finished, her voice laced with genuine concern. "It's a shame how some people forget the sacrifices others make. You deserve better than to be out here, struggling." She paused, then added, a personal touch to her understanding, "You know, my dad was a veteran too. He always said the hardest part wasn't the fighting, it was coming home, trying to find your place again when the world had changed so much." Silas looked into her eyes, seeing not just pity, but profound understanding. He saw her own struggles, etched in the subtle lines around her eyes, in the faint weariness of her posture, yet despite her own burdens, her own daily battles, she extended warmth, kindness, and dignity to a complete stranger. She didn't see a homeless man or a tramp, she saw a human being worthy of respect, a fellow traveler on life's difficult path. This was the stark contrast he had been searching for, the profound difference that sealed his decision. His family, drowning in wealth, offered only contempt, only dismissal. This struggling waitress, barely making ends meet, offered a boundless well of human kindness, a true measure of wealth. The answer to his great experiment was becoming clearer, more definitive, with every passing moment. The day of the highly anticipated reading of Silas Hawthorne's will had arrived, a morbid spectacle disguised as a solemn family gathering. The air in the ornate mahogany-paneled study of the Hawthorne estate crackled with a mix of thinly veiled excitement and feigned grief, a palpable tension underlying the polite murmurs. Sterling and Genevieve, dressed in somber but undoubtedly expensive attire, sat front and center, their faces set in expressions of practiced solemnity that barely concealed their triumphant anticipation. They exchanged smug glances, little knowing smiles, confident in their imminent inheritance, already mentally spending the fortune, planning their next lavish acquisitions. The family lawyer, Mr. Alastair Finch, a man known for his impeccable discretion and unwavering loyalty to Silas, sat behind the grand desk, the thick, sealed envelope of the last will and testament resting before him like a judgment from the heavens. Other relatives, some distant cousins, some long-forgotten aunts, sat in hushed reverence, their hopes quietly pinned on a share of the vast estate. Just as Mr. Finch cleared his throat, preparing to begin the proceedings, the heavy oak doors of the study swung open with a dramatic creak, echoing through the hushed room. All eyes turned, startled by the unexpected interruption. Standing in the doorway, not the disheveled veteran, but a figure of commanding presence, was a man immaculately dressed in a tailored suit of charcoal gray, perfectly cut to emphasize his powerful build. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed, his eyes sharp and piercing, surveying the room with an almost regal air. He was accompanied by a discreet, burly bodyguard, whose silent presence exuded an unspoken threat. A collective gasp rippled through the room, a wave of stunned realization. Sterling's jaw went slack, his champagne flute slipping from his fingers to shatter silently on the thick Persian rug, a metaphor for his crumbling world. Genevieve's eyes widened to saucers, her carefully constructed composure crumbling in an instant, replaced by a look of abject horror. It was Silas Hawthorne. The supposedly dead, reclusive patriarch. Very much alive. A deathly silence descended upon the room, broken only by the rapid, shallow breaths of the stunned attendees, the faint tick of a grandfather clock in the corner. Sterling, pale as a ghost, finally stammered, "Grandpa? But, how? The funeral, the reports," his voice trailed off, a pathetic whimper of disbelief, unable to reconcile the image before him with the reality he had so confidently accepted. Silas, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his mourners, a faint, almost sardonic smile playing on his lips, slowly advanced into the room. He walked with a newfound vigor, the slouch of the veteran gone, replaced by the confident, powerful stride of a man who held all the cards, who controlled the very air they breathed. He stopped directly in front of Sterling and Genevieve, his eyes fixed on their terrified, rapidly paling faces. "Indeed, Sterling," Silas said, his voice deep and resonant, filling the room with an undeniable authority that brooked no argument. "The reports were quite convincing, weren't they? A masterstroke of meticulous planning, if I do say so myself. You see, I had to be certain. Certain of who you truly are, and certain of who truly deserves the fruits of my life's labor." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle upon them like a shroud, suffocating their hopes. "For too long," he continued, his tone hardening, his voice unwavering, "I have observed the insidious decay of integrity, the corrosive greed that has infected this family, like a virulent disease. I witnessed your callous disregard for human dignity, your obsession with material gain, your eagerness to dismantle everything I built for the sake of profit, your callous disregard for the very values that built this empire." His gaze flickered to Sterling, then to Genevieve, his eyes piercing through their illusions. "You celebrated my supposed demise, didn't you? You openly planned the division of my assets, mocking my life's work, even discussing how to modernize the company by stripping its soul, its very purpose." Sterling tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came. His face was a contorted mask of fear and dawning comprehension, the horror of his situation finally sinking in. Genevieve, beside him, seemed to shrink, her elaborate dress suddenly feeling like a burden, her diamonds like stones. And then, Silas pressed on, his voice filled with a chilling irony, a cutting edge that sliced through the silence. "There was the matter of the homeless veteran. A persistent nuisance, wasn't he? A tramp to be dismissed, to be scorned, to be sent away with a flick of the wrist. You, Sterling, and your charming fiancée, Genevieve, consistently treated him with utter contempt. You saw only a disheveled old man, an inconvenience, a stain on your pristine, privileged world, an obstacle to be avoided. He took another step closer, his eyes boring into theirs, an intensity that made them recoil. What you failed to see, what your myopic focus on wealth prevented you from seeing, was that the homeless veteran was me, Silas Hawthorne. I walked among you, unmasked your true nature, and found it utterly devoid of compassion, utterly bankrupt of humanity. A wave of murmurs swept through the room as the other family members and associates finally understood the shocking depth of Silas's deception, the cunning behind his long game. Some gasped, others looked away in shame, realizing their own complicity in the charade, their own passive acceptance of Sterling's greed. A few even paled, remembering their own brief, dismissive encounters with the tramp. But my journey was not without its revelations of goodness, Silas continued, his voice softening slightly as he looked away from Sterling and Genevieve, his gaze now distant, recalling a different face, a different warmth. In a humble diner, miles from this gilded cage, in a world you would never deign to enter, I found a Lara Vance. A woman who, despite her own struggles, despite the heavy burdens she carries, extended genuine kindness, respect, and a warm meal to a stranger she believed to be down on his luck. She saw a human being, not a burden, not a nuisance. She listened with an open heart, not an empty wallet. She embodied the very virtues that have long since vanished from these halls, from this family. He turned back to Mr. Finch, a signal. Mr. Finch, if you please, the real last will and testament. Mr. Finch, a slight, knowing smile playing on his lips, retrieved a different, much thicker document from his briefcase, a document that had been carefully hidden and secured. He set it on the desk with a soft thud. The original, sealed envelope remained untouched, a relic of a false reality, a ghost of a will. This document, Silas declared, his voice ringing with finality, with absolute authority, dictates the true disposition of the Hawthorne Innovations empire and my personal fortune. It ensures that my legacy, built on innovation and integrity, falls into the hands of those who will honor its true purpose, not those who seek to merely plunder its coffers. His eyes, cold and unwavering, rested once more on Sterling and Genevieve, who now stood utterly broken, their faces a mixture of horror and utter despair. The game was indeed over, and they had lost everything, their carefully constructed world shattered beyond repair. The immediate aftermath of Silas Hawthorne's dramatic reveal was a maelstrom of shock, disbelief, and public humiliation. Sterling and Genevieve, who minutes before had envisioned themselves as the undisputed masters of a vast fortune, found their world collapsing around them with breathtaking speed. Mr. Finch, with a quiet efficiency that belied the monumental task, began reading the true will, his voice calm and steady amidst the rising chaos. The terms were brutal, unequivocal, and left no room for doubt or appeal. Sterling Hawthorne, along with Genevieve and any other family members who had actively participated in the open discussions of Silas's deteriorating health and the immediate future of his assets with callous disregard, were explicitly disinherited. Not a single penny, not a single share, not even a family heirloom would pass to them. The will detailed how all assets earmarked for them, including various trusts, properties, and corporate shares, were to be immediately diverted to a newly established philanthropic foundation, managed by a carefully selected independent board, with a specific mandate to fund sustainable energy projects, support struggling veterans, and invest in ethical technological advancements. Sterling, initially struck dumb, eventually found his voice, a pathetic roar of rage and betrayal. This is a joke. A cruel, elaborate joke. You can't do this, Grandpa. I'm your blood. Your only heir. This is insane. He lunged forward, as if to snatch the will from Mr. Finch's hands, his face contorted in a desperate fury, but Silas's bodyguard, a silent sentinel, smoothly intercepted him, holding him back with an almost imperceptible pressure, a silent, powerful warning. Genevieve, her face contorted in a grotesque mask of fury and despair, shrieked, "You old fool! You've ruined us. Everything we planned. You'll regret this, you hear me? You'll regret this." Her threats, however, were hollow, devoid of any real power, dissolving into bitter sobs. Silas merely watched them, his expression impassive, a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "You ruined yourselves, Sterling," he stated calmly, his voice resonating with an unshakable conviction. "I merely exposed the truth of your character, a truth that was always there, waiting to be seen. A legacy built on greed and contempt is no legacy at all. It is a hollow shell, destined to crumble." News of Silas Hawthorne's resurrection and the shocking disinheritance spread like wildfire, fueled by the breathless reports of the few reporters who had managed to get wind of the gathering. The media, hungry for scandal, feasted on the story, running sensational headlines and exposé pieces. Sterling and Genevieve's carefully cultivated public images shattered overnight, their past arrogance now viewed through the lens of their present humiliation. Their social standing plummeted. Friends and acquaintances, who had once flocked to their side, seeking favors and invitations, now avoided them, fearing association with such a public disgrace. Business ventures collapsed, credit lines were revoked, and their extravagant lifestyles, once supported by the illusion of vast inherited wealth, became unsustainable. Within weeks, their luxurious penthouse was seized, their designer cars repossessed, and their credit cards maxed out. They found themselves, for the first time in their lives, utterly destitute, forced to confront a reality where their names carried no weight, their charm no currency. They were reduced to the very tramps they had so casually dismissed, bitter and broken, forced to live in a world they had always scorned. Meanwhile, a quiet revolution was unfolding in the life of Elara Vance. Days after the dramatic reveal, Silas had dispatched Mr. Finch to Elara's diner. Elara, initially bewildered by the presence of the stern-faced lawyer in his impeccable suit, was led into a private conversation in her small, cramped office. Mr. Finch, maintaining his professional composure, explained that the old veteran she had so kindly served, the man she knew as Silas, was, in fact, Silas Hawthorne, the very man whose death had dominated the news. He explained the grand experiment, the deliberate test of humanity. Elara's reaction was a kaleidoscope of emotions, disbelief, then overwhelming shock, followed by a profound humility that brought tears to her eyes. "But I just gave him a meal," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, still processing the impossible truth. "It was nothing. I do that for people all the time. It's just the right thing to do." Mr. Finch merely offered a small, knowing smile, a rare softening of his professional demeanor. To Mr. Hawthorne, Miss Vance, it was everything. It was a beacon of true humanity in a world he had come to believe was devoid of it. It was the answer he had been searching for. He then presented her with a series of documents, each one a life-changing revelation. The first was the deed to a beautiful, fully paid-off house in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, large enough for her and her children, with a spacious garden and a charming porch swing. The second was an account statement showing a substantial trust fund, meticulously managed, enough to secure her family's financial future for generations, allowing her to pursue her dreams, to stop working two exhausting jobs. The third was an offer to fund the expansion of her diner, or indeed, to help her start any business she desired, with expert financial and business advice from the new foundation. Elara stared at the documents, her hands trembling, her vision blurred by tears. Tears welled in her eyes, silent, shimmering droplets of disbelief and gratitude. She thought of her children, of the years of struggle, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights spent worrying about bills, the dreams deferred. And now, this impossible, breathtaking gift, a miracle. It was not merely money, it was freedom, security, and the profound affirmation that her quiet, unwavering kindness had been seen, truly seen, and profoundly rewarded. She remembered the old veteran's eyes, filled with a strange, knowing glint that she had not understood then. She remembered the warmth of his smile as he ate her meatloaf, the quiet dignity with which he accepted her simple offering. She had seen him as just another human being in need, a soul deserving of a warm meal and a moment of peace, and in return, he had seen the best in her, the true worth of her spirit. Elara, a woman who had given without expectation, now received a bounty beyond her wildest dreams, a testament to the powerful, ripple effect of a single act of selfless compassion. Months turned into a year, and the ripples of Silas Hawthorne's dramatic return and the subsequent shake-up of his empire settled into a new, albeit dramatically altered, equilibrium. Silas, no longer burdened by the pretense of death or the weight of daily managing a multi-billion-dollar corporation, found a profound sense of peace. He had entrusted the new Hawthorne Foundation to a board of dedicated philanthropists and ethical business leaders, ensuring his legacy of innovation and sustainability would genuinely benefit humanity, not line the pockets of the undeserving. He still maintained a watchful eye, receiving regular reports, offering occasional guidance, but from a distance, content to be the architect, not the daily overseer. His health, no longer feigned, genuinely improved, freed from the stress of a toxic environment. His true joy, however, came from quietly observing Elara Vance. He would occasionally, discreetly, visit the now thriving Elara's Diner, which had expanded into a beloved local institution, renowned for its hearty food and its owner's unwavering kindness. The diner was bustling, filled with laughter and the aroma of good food, a true community hub. Elara, no longer perpetually exhausted, radiated a quiet contentment, a newfound joy that transformed her. She had used a portion of the trust fund to renovate the diner, making it even more welcoming, adding new, comfortable booths and a brighter, more efficient kitchen. She had ensured fair wages and good benefits for her employees, creating a supportive work environment. She had also started a small community outreach program, providing free meals to the homeless and elderly in her neighborhood, quietly paying forward the kindness she had received, her generosity boundless. Her children, now in a secure and stable environment, thrived in school, their futures bright and unburdened by financial worries. Silas would sit in a back booth, sipping coffee, a silent observer of the genuine good he had cultivated, the profound positive impact of his decision. He saw in her the living proof that his ultimate decision had been the right one, that true wealth lay not in accumulation, but in the power to uplift and empower those who possessed an inner richness that money could never buy. As for Sterling and Genevieve, their downfall was complete and irreversible. Stripped of their wealth, their social standing, and their illusions of grandeur, they were left with nothing but their bitter resentment, a corrosive poison that consumed them. Sterling, utterly unable to cope with the loss of his inherited privilege, spiraled into a self-destructive cycle, unable to adapt to a world where his name carried no weight. He eventually found himself reduced to working menial, low-paying jobs, constantly complaining about the injustice that had befallen him, blaming everyone but himself for his misfortune, forever stuck in the past. Genevieve, equally accustomed to a life of luxury, found herself unable to maintain her superficial charm without the backing of wealth. Her beauty, once her greatest asset, faded under the weight of stress and bitterness. She faded into obscurity, her once sharp wit dulled by continuous failure, her social circle evaporated. They were the cautionary tale whispered in elite circles, a stark reminder that entitlement, left unchecked, could lead to utter ruin. Their lives became a desolate landscape, barren of the genuine connections and intrinsic worth they had always scorned, living a life of quiet despair, a mirror image of the tramp they had so reviled. Silas, in his quiet moments of reflection, understood that his elaborate charade had been more than just a test, it was a necessary cleansing. He had purged the rot from his legacy, ensuring that the fruits of his labor would nourish genuine compassion and innovation, not feed parasitic greed. He had seen the depths of human depravity in his own family, in those he had once loved, but he had also witnessed the boundless wellspring of kindness in a stranger, a woman who shone with an inner light. It was a profound lesson, learned at great personal cost, but one that ultimately brought him profound, lasting peace, knowing his life's work would continue to make a difference in the world, in the hands of those who truly cared. The story of Silas Hawthorne, the homeless billionaire, serves as a timeless testament to a universal truth: character is best revealed not in the harsh glare of prosperity, but in the dim, revealing light of adversity. For it is in our treatment of the unseen, the unheard, and the seemingly insignificant that our true selves are laid bare, our humanity truly tested. And while the world often celebrates the accumulation of wealth, it is the quiet, selfless act of kindness, extended without expectation of reward, that truly holds the greatest value, always finding its way back, often in ways more profound and life-altering than one could ever imagine. If this extraordinary tale of justice, compassion, and the surprising twists of fate resonated with you, then you're in the right place. Here on our channel, we delve into countless stories just like Silas Hawthorne's, where hidden truths are revealed, and karma finds its way. Don't miss out on more captivating narratives that will make you question, reflect, and perhaps even inspire you to see the world a little differently. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when a new story drops. And now, we want to hear from you. What was the most shocking part of Silas's plan for you? If you were Silas, would you have been able to keep your true identity a secret for so long? And what act of selfless kindness have you witnessed or been a part of that left a lasting impact? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. We love reading them. Your insights truly enrich our community.